From Rectangle Health, this is the Modern Practice Podcast, a show that provides you with fresh perspectives and practical advice from industry experts in the ever-changing world of healthcare technology. Every episode, we tackle a timely topic to help you stay current and simplify the business side of healthcare. Without further ado...
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Modern Practice Podcast presented by Rectangle Health. Before we get started here, as always, I just want to express my deepest gratitude to you all for following the show over the years, liking, subscribing, and following along on your favorite streaming channels. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to, as we'll be discussing some exciting news and a release to share with the healthcare industry that will prove to be game-changing, to say the least. Our guest today is Michael Peluso, a graduate of UConn School of Business with a focus on health systems management. Mike is no stranger to the show and has been at the helm of Rectangle Health's innovation since 2013. He started out as Chief Technology Officer and in August of 2023 moved in to take on the role of Chief Product and Strategy Officer. Mike, I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. Thanks for taking the time.
Gary, I'm excited to be here. I don't know if you know, I'm a big fan of the Modern Practice Podcast. I drive to work. I think I have an hour commute each day, and I try to catch up on these as I drive back and forth to work. So I'm excited to be on.
Appreciate that, Mike. Thanks again. And before we get into the exciting news, the unveiling, I want to keep our audience on the edge of their seats here a little bit. I wanted to get into this new position you hold at Rectangle Health, shifting from CTO to the role you're in now. And sort of a preface to that, since I've known you, it's been about 4 years now. You've always challenged the status quo, and you push others to do the same, finding new ways to innovate and deliver better experiences every day, not just for practices, but for the patients as well. So how does this new role you're in align to your approach to driving innovation? And are you in a place where you're speaking to the practices and the organizations like DSOs to get sort of that firsthand insight as you drive that innovation?
Yeah, I appreciate it. One, sort of the transition allowed me to be more external facing. So as CTO and any CTOs that are out there, it's an internal role, meaning you work a lot with sort of internal workings of the organization, the development teams, the product teams, and you certainly drive innovation. But as Chief Product and Strategy Officer, you work a lot more with the market. You work a lot more with the customers. You work a lot more in trying to identify issues, trying to identify trends, trying to identify what's going on in the industry, and then taking those issues, bringing them back and building solutions around them. Pretty easy thing in B2B, unlike B2C. So B2C is where you have to invent Meta, or you have to invent Google, or you have to invent Instagram. Like that's pretty hard stuff.
I mean, you could do it.
Yeah, but in B2B, it's pretty simple. You just go out to customers and say, hey, what's going wrong? What are your pain points? What can I help you with? What can I build to sort of solve your problems? And the best part is usually if you build them, they'll use them.
Sure.
You know, they'll consume and they'll go, this is exactly what I needed. I had this problem. You built X. Now I don't have that problem anymore. So as Chief Product and Strategy Officer, that's a mouthful to say. It's nice to be able to go out to customers. It's nice to be able to go out to the market. It's nice to be able to go to, various, trade show associations and just listen and consume and talk to people and say, hey, what can I solve? And you'd be surprised. It's people will tell you exactly what you can solve for them. And if you can solve it and build a product around it, that's usually the sort of best relationship you can have with the market and your customers. They'll if you build it, they will come is a true statement. Definitely in sort of B2B SaaS payment technology world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think your approach has that trickle down effect on the Rectangle Health team. That whole consultative approach. How do we make your day simpler, easier, more profitable? I love the boots on the ground approach. And I think that sets us up nicely to talk about why we're here, what the current state of the union is, if you will, around payer payments. And we're talking about practices in larger healthcare organizations and their interactions around receiving payments from the insurance companies. So obviously our listeners are in it every day, and it may be the status quo and just part of the process of daily business operations. but like, can you just touch on what the friction points are and where are the pain points in that relationship between payer provider?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to what I said before, what I mentioned before, we go out to customers and we listen. And customers were saying, we're getting these payments from payers on virtual credit cards. Now, Rectangle Health has historically said, well, we know you're getting payments from patients. We all carry a credit card in our wallet. And when we go to a provider, whether we use our HSA card or FSA card, we swipe that card or we insert that card or we pay with that card. And Rectangle has traditionally helped with that. What PayerSync does is PayerSync actually listens for those payer payments, right? Now, I listen to all of our providers say, Mike, we're getting these payer payments, right? And we're just keying them in. And a lot of them, and trust me, I went out there, they had stacks of these things in their offices where they haven't gotten to them for months. And the dollar amounts in these stacks are 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, $100,000 of payments that they just haven't gotten to because the payer sent them and they now need to manually process them. So we've developed something called PayerSync, right? That allows them to eliminate that entire stack, right? And it allows them to automate that entire stack. And what it does is it creates just this simplicity, the simplicity that we created around patient payments, we're now creating around payer payments. And the digital reconciliation and all that functionality that goes with it, we've kind of built into it. So we identified, hey, payers are paying, right? We want payers to pay. Nobody wants a payer to not pay. Providers need to accept those payments. And I think they're willing to accept them, sure, but they want to accept them in a way of that creates less friction, in a way that creates less paperwork, right? In a way that's more digital. Just like, a long time ago, when you're too young for this, Gary, but I'm older than you. When I went to a provider or when my mom took me to a provider, let's use that one. Like she wrote a check, yep, right? Well, checks got complicated and checks, all of a sudden, well, I could just swipe a card or insert a card. Well, think of that same shift, but think of it in the payer world, sure, right? Payers for a long time wrote checks. Now they're sending digital payments, and now providers want to process those payments digitally. And that's what we heard the market say. That's what the market, as I was doing all the research, said. How do we consume these? What do we do, right? Because they actually like them. They just want to consume them better, consume them more easily. And that's what we're really trying to help out with.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's exciting. With pre-PayerSync, if we just take a step back, you mentioned check to credit card, that process evolving a little bit. Over the years, is that the only advancement that you can think of just off the top of your head that the way things were done? And the reason why I ask is because if there's no other way, if that's the status quo that we spoke about just a few minutes ago, it's just a part of every provider's daily task to fight the good fight, get the answers, or in this case, the payment, and just process it however long it takes to get through that massive stack. What would you say aside from that going from check to credit card payment that's kind of evolved, or has there been evolvement?
Yeah, there's definitely been evolution. Again, I think paper check, mm-hmm, which, again, young guy like you go paper check, who uses those, right? There's still quite a bit of them in the healthcare world. Sure. There's still quite a bit of them in the non-healthcare world. There was just an executive order from the president's office that they're going to stop sending paper checks for federal money, right? But paper checks still exist quite a bit, and they're quite prevalent in healthcare, in dental, in sort of payer payments, right? Now they have done ACH, and ACH works very well too. We've all used ACH before. You put in your routing number and account number, and entity A can send money to entity B as long as they know that routing number and account number. And I would call that an advancement from paper check. I think the problem with it is the speed is very slow, right? The routing number and account number gets entered in. By the way, there's no real checks on routing number and account number, meaning if you were to ask me what my routing number and account number is, Gary, as long as I gave you a 9-digit routing number,
that's good.
In any account number, it would technically work on the ACH system. Now it would fail because it's not real, but it would technically work. So ACH was an advancement. I think with using credit card, the term a lot of us use, or you'll hear us say, is rails. When you use credit card rails, the speed is tremendous. The speed is instantaneous. It's more secure. It's validated, meaning if you type in a fake credit card number, it won't work, right? And it knows that it's fake immediately when you type it in. Credit card number has much more logic to it. The funding is near instantaneous. At most, it takes about 1 day to move money from entity A to entity B when you use a credit card. And then the way that we sort of enabled it or kind of brought it to the next level is we're able to move the data along with it. And that's something pretty unique to PayerSync, is that data movement from point A to point B, or entity A to entity B, in that for us, that data is very HIPAA sensitive. And a lot of banks that use the ACH network, they don't want any part of that sensitive data, but that data is critical to the provider. So that's probably the other important part. But, we've been paying claims in healthcare for, I don't know, let's go 50, 60 years. It's really those three advancements. There aren't very many other ways out there for a payer to pay a provider other than a paper check, an ACH transaction, or a transaction that utilizes the credit card network, which you'll hear us refer to as a virtual credit card transaction.
Makes sense. Super interesting and exciting. So my next question around all this with PayerSync, if we're looking at the whole process, as far as integration goes, you mentioned automation. There's obviously a quicker payment happening between payer and provider. If we take it a step further, as the provider gets paid quicker, there's sometimes a balance too. There's a lot of value in knowing what the patient owes sooner and reaching out to that patient sooner and saying, hey, you owe $25 for this whatever treatment, and getting that payment quicker. So the way that I'm not as good at analogies as you are, Mike, but the way I see this is not pedal to the metal revenue acceleration. It's not, smacking a turbo on this engine. It's a whole new revenue engine that PayerSync is providing. Am I right in kind of drawing that?
Oh, absolutely. You're going from, I love your analogies, Gary. And no offense to anyone that drives maybe a Honda Civic or maybe an old 1950 Ford Pinto. Yeah. You're going from a Ford Pinto to a brand new Porsche 911 or a brand new Ferrari or, a brand new, fully electric Rivian, right? You're going from just old antiquated systems to newer, faster, more data rich systems. And you're getting that to what you said, you're getting paid instantly, right? Meaning you don't have to manually run it. Remember, that stack goes away, right? So the money comes in, the money moves instantly and processes instantly. So payer pays the provider, it go ahead and show up in the provider's bank account, right? Then it gets unpacked, meaning it could be a $10,000 payment.
Sure.
Then it gets unpacked and says, okay, for this one $10,000 payment, it was for 10 patients. Right? We'll just make it simple math. Sure. Each one was $1,000. Okay. So, and then within each $1,000, it will tell you this person received a cleaning, or this person received a dental exam, or they received a cardiology procedure. Here's how much the provider billed. Here's how much the insurance company allowed. Here's how much the insurance company paid. Here's how much the patient owes. All of that comes in that data load that came with the PayerSync transaction. All of that then gets reconciled back to the patient accounting or practice management system of the office. And then, and you're right, then there's an outstanding balance that's sitting there that says, hey, here's what the patient owes, right? Now, before, remember the whole stack of paper we talked about? If the office manager didn't go through that and process that, they wouldn't know the patient responsibility. So all that time, let's just say 30, 40, 50, 60 days, right? That patient they're not getting a bill. They're not getting a text to make a payment. The patient might not even, so much time might pass. The patient might not even know they owe anything, right? Because the provider hasn't processed that payment to then determine what the patient responsibility is. But with PayerSync, you get all those benefits I just laid out. And then at the very end, that patient responsibility pops up and you may be able to do a text to pay. You may be able to settle it to a vault. You may be able to do a lot of different things with that, but you'll know it much faster than previous. You'll get that data. It's much more data rich.
So it's truly game changing and perfect.
It is. And it's when you think about changing, right? We're going to have to do a lot of these podcasts, I think, Gary, so that everybody can kind of listen to how much we're trying to change things. It's a big shift. And some people are open to change really quickly. And some aren't. And I think that's okay. But it's going to be up to us to educate everybody and make them feel comfortable about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that change, part of the reason why I was so excited about this is because this isn't hitting ice cold. This isn't hitting the market ice cold. From what I understand, small single location practices and even a larger multi-location organization already on board. Already on board. We have a small practice. I just met with this small dental practice a few weeks ago. Sat down with the office manager, and she actually had a good analogy, as we're talking about analogies today. She said, Mike, this is like going from when you used to balance your checkbook and you used to sort of get your manual bank statements to online banking. Love that.
She said everything is in the computer now.
In the computer.
She's a great lady. And it's, what do you mean in the computer? And she goes, well, there's no more stack of paper. There's no more like trying to do anything manually. I just log in to PayerSync and it's all there. All my payments from all my payers are there. All the data that I was looking for is there. It's kind of like logging into your online banking. It's all there. It tells you where you used your check card, tells you who you wrote a check to, tells you how much money is remaining in your bank account, tells you when direct deposits came in. Think of PayerSync, almost the same thing. No more paper checks, no more trying to create a ledger of everything you've ever done, no more manual. It's doing all that in an automated fashion.
I love that. And I love that in the computer as a major value to the provider. And speaking of value, if there were, let's say, 3 what-if questions about the current processes, assuming, someone doesn't listen to this podcast, they don't read the PayerSync press release, they don't visit the website, what have you. What are 3 or 4 or however many you want to give, really core values that, if you were communicating this out to a listener or just happen to run into a dentist somewhere, 3 core values of PayerSync?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, and I think you use your what if. What if you could automate payer payments? And to steal the analogy, put them in the computer, right? You can get payer payments via ACH. That does exist today, right? But that's still not automated. You still have to get a paper EOB, or you still have to get something else so that you can reconcile the $10,000 deposit in your bank account to, hey, that $10,000 is for these 10 patients and $1,000 each patient. So what if you can automate that? And then what if all of that data was available, again, in the computer, right? It's available to you so that you can see it, you can unpack it, you can understand it. And it's also the same no matter who's paying you, right? Today, a provider can log on to the Blue Cross site, or the provider can log on to the United site, or they can log on to the, whatever other payer they're working with site. And they can see a lot of this in there, but it looks different between each one. Blue Cross, They display it one way and United displays it another way. Well, with PayerSync, it's all normalized. It looks exactly the same no matter who's paying you. And then what if you could take all of it and reconcile it back to a system that's important to you? And for providers, it's their patient accounting practice management system. So I think those are probably the big things, sort of the automation, the data that's available, or sort of the data that you can see, or normalized data. And then the last one would be that reconciliation. How do you reconcile and tie it all back to a system that matters to the provider? And PayerSync does all of that, hence the name PayerSync.
I love that, Mike, and thank you for that. And we touched on it a minute or two ago about, once you receive this automated payment from the payer, knowing that a patient owes some sort of balance, after that payment is made. How do you bring this full circle? Let's say PayerSync, practice management system, or EMR, and then intertwining, let's say, payment technology, whatever it may be, online payments, Vault, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of the final piece, right? I like the 3 benefits that we laid out, but that final piece is kind of that speed to sort of close it out, right? Today, you probably heard the term revenue cycle, right? This is the longest, most drawn out part of the revenue cycle is, okay, billing the payer, okay, payer paying, usually in some sort of paper or manual way, okay, processing that, taking the balance from that, putting it onto a statement, sending the patient a statement, right? That's really long and drawn out. Now, we just went through how to automate all of that with PayerSync. And then, PayerSync immediately knows, once the payer pays, it immediately knows, hey, here's that patient responsibility. Here's that final piece, right? And actually, it could be 2 things. Believe it or not, it could be, hey, you need to bill the patient for this dollar amount. It could actually be the reverse. You might have over-collected from the patient in the beginning, and then the payer paid, and now you owe the patient back dollars, right? You still want to close that out. It's as important not only to collect the money, but believe it or not, if you owe the patient money, actually almost more important. The patients are pretty sensitive about that. So PayerSync allows you to grab that dollar amount, negative or positive, and then do something with it. Whether you want to take it and utilize a payment application and do text to pay, or utilize a payment application and do sort of an online balance collect type feature, or there's still a traditional send them a statement. But you really want to do something with that dollar amount and get it settled. I think PayerSync speeds that up quite a bit, automates it quite a bit, puts it, we're going to love this one, in the computer so that it can all kind of be settled and taken care of as quickly as possible. And then you can shorten that revenue cycle, and you can increase, for a provider, increase your working capital, right? That's because this is all dollars that's in a provider's bank account, and that's important for them to pay payroll or buy new equipment for the office or whatever they might need. All of this helps create funding for all of that as well.
I love that. And we talked about the impact it's had on the small practice with in the computer, with changing patient payment responsibilities, rising costs. There's, DSOs undoubtedly are experiencing some revenue leakage. So can you talk to me a little bit about on a PayerSync on a larger scale with DSOs and specifically DSOs, and then any feedback or insights the larger organization that's already on PayerSync, any feedback or results that they've seen that you could share with us?
Yeah. So visited a DSO, and actually the sample that I used for you is actually from a DSO. I sat next to somebody and they had a stack of these sitting next to them. Well, it wasn't just one person. It was a room full of 60 people that had a stack of them next to them. And they just can't get through them fast enough. They're coming in all the time. And in a DSO market, a lot of times these virtual cards, excuse me, are used for a lot of smaller payers or, niche payers. And they need to be manually processed, right? This eliminates that. But even when big payments come in, before they had 5 people that said, okay, the big Blue Cross payment is coming in at the end of the month, and it could be $500,000. It could be $1 million, right? Well, it's going to come with, 18 pages of reconciliation reports. It's going to come with, 18 days of manual posting. With PayerSync, it's as fast as the previous examples. The payment comes in and you're done. There is no manual intervention. There is no unpacking. There is no double checking. Again, it automates, meaning it automates the payment. It unpacks all of the data for you, and then it reconciles it for you. So the efficiencies in DSOs are gained. Like they can actually eliminate FTEs. Now, I'm not saying go and start exiting people because of this great solution, but it creates efficiency, and then you can take those people and deploy them to other areas that you might need them in. That's really what we're looking to facilitate, and that's really what PayerSync does, big and small.
That makes sense. Great example there, Mike. As far as if we're talking about whether it's, we'll start with the single practice, single location practice. What's implementation look like as far as, onboarding with PayerSync and, get going from day one forward?
Absolutely. So it's pretty simple. You just have to provide some KYC factors. That's know your customer. So you have to provide, your tax ID, the name of your office, your address. You provide that information and we validate it. And once that's done, we can turn you on at any of the vendors that would be pushing money in this manner. So any vendors that you're getting VCCs from today, PayerSync is connected to turn you as a provider on. So it's about a one day implementation rollout period. Yep. Okay. So in one day, we can take you from not having PayerSync to completely having PayerSync and getting all of these payments digitally and getting them all set up. That's how quick PayerSync works.
That's incredible. So
and think about I don't know, Gary, you use Venmo or do you use Zelle?
Both.
You can enroll in one day.
Yeah.
It's kind of we kind of use the same idea behind it, right? We want people to be able to enroll in this very quickly, and we want them to be able to get paid very quickly, just like Venmo or Zelle lets you get paid from another person. They call them peer-to-peer payments. PayerSync is the same thing.
That's impressive. No business disruption, immediate automation, and that's just faster dollars coming through your door or in the computer.
You got it.
So I want to touch on this because PayerSync is new, and new can often be scary, and we're in healthcare, and obviously patient data, patient information, super sensitive. What's the compliance and security look like around PayerSync?
Yeah. And that's why you hear us use the term card rails. You hear us use the term HIPAA. Sure. So this is completely 100% HIPAA compliant. It's completely 100% PCI compliant, and it's built to be that way. And the way it's actually built in the background is we run the financial data in one section and we run the healthcare data in another section, and the two of them actually don't touch except for when the provider goes to the PayerSync login, and then we pull it all together so the provider can see it on their screen. And that's how it's built. So even if someone were to go in and let's say, I don't love to use this word, hack the financial data, they wouldn't get access to the healthcare data. And if they were going to hack the healthcare data, they wouldn't get access to the financial data. We keep the two of them very separate. Now, both of them still are much more secure than ACH. ACH actually has a high rate of fraud. This is a much more secure method to run those payments.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool.
I love this. I know we're coming up on time, but just a follow up to that 24-hour turnaround, that one day. by your estimation or guess, by the results you've already seen with PayerSync users, what type of time, dollar savings, or revenue acceleration is there? Is there any sort of percentages or anything you could share just with the audience listening in? If not, totally cool. But just to get a sense of like how the day to day will be impacted if they haven't already gotten it from PayerSync is installed and payments are coming in automatically.
Yeah, so I think the big one that we try to measure, the big one that actually healthcare offices use is something called AR days. AR days is how many days does it take to collect AR.
Sure.
So early sort of numbers analyze that AR days decrease by at least 25% when bringing in PayerSync. So if it used to take you, 30 days to get paid, now you're getting paid in, 18 days. It's actually much, much faster. And again, it's not just the payer payment that comes in faster. It can actually facilitate a faster patient payment as well.
It's incredible stuff. The results speaking for themselves right here. So for folks tuning in, if you'd like to learn more about PayerSync, connect with Mike on LinkedIn, send him a message, or you can schedule time with us to walk you through it in detail. I'll have both links in the episode description below. Mike, this has been fun, and I have to ask one more question before we wrap up here, because as I mentioned at the top of the episode, you're always challenging the status quo. So we spoke about how things were done in the past, how they're done now, how PayerSync changes everything. And in the near future, in your eyes, what does PayerSync and the entire, payer payments landscape look like in, let's say, 10 years?
10 years, I'd like to see every payment flowing this way. Again, to the executive order that recently came out from the government, they don't want to send paper checks anymore.
Right.
Payers don't want to send paper checks anymore. Providers don't want to get paper checks anymore. ACH has some complications. This solves all of that. So, 10 years from now, aspirationally, I want to see every payment flow through PayerSync. And I think it can be done. I definitely think it can be done. And that's really where I think everyone will move towards is just digital payments. So money moving from point A to point B. If someone sat on your podcast 10 years ago when you were 12 years old, Gary,
I wish.
They might have said, hey, I only want people to use credit cards and digital payments for personal payments. Yeah. And somebody would go, oh, you're crazy. Cash and check are never going to go away. Nobody uses cash anymore. They don't even issue checkbooks anymore.
You got to pay for those.
Yeah. So it's possible. And I think PayerSync makes it possible in the medical and dental space.
Yeah, really incredible stuff, Mike. And I don't doubt that you will push for that to happen probably sooner than 10 years. So
I hope so.
Mike, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I know the launch is happening. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Can't wait to do it again.
Likewise. And we most certainly will chat soon. And folks, just a reminder again, if you'd like to learn more about PayerSync, I'll have the links to connect with Mike directly on LinkedIn and to schedule time to speak to us about how we can implement at your practice. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe on your favorite streaming channel or visit rectanglehealth.com/podcast to stay up to date with the latest discussions. Thanks again for all tuning in. Till next time, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Practice Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or SoundCloud for new episodes. And follow Rectangle Health on social media for more helpful information, news, and event details. Thanks for tuning in.